Greetings and salutations, everyone. For the longest time, I've been meaning to talk about Halo. It is by far one of my favorite games and best first-person shooters that I've ever played. To its stellar world, amazing soundtrack, memorable characters, and grandiose story. For over 20 years, it's been a household name, well, at least to gamers, and a treasured favorite too. I'm very happy to say that I'm a fan of this franchise and that I get to talk about it and its new campaign today with Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite is the 6th game of the Halo series, not counting Reach, ODST, and the 2 Halo Wars, and the several other games that are out there, I'm pretty sure. And this is actually my first time playing it in real time compared to the others that I played fairly recently in the Master Chief Collection. I'd have played it a lot sooner, but...
were it so easy.
Anyways, without further delay, let's lock and load and grapple right into the story of Halo Infinite. Be warned, we will definitely be covering the spicy spoilers. Alright, I lied a little bit. Before we jump into Halo Infinite, let's cover what happened prior within the story so you get a good idea of what's going on. Helps a lot with setting up the scene anyways. So previously, Chief had to say goodbye to his AI unit Cortana, after they had confronted and stopped the Didact, one of the last few Forerunners, and one that is extremely dangerous. This guy was basically a friggin' Sith Lord. He had a badass helmet, force abilities to chuck things all around, and even had a world-destroying spaceship. Dude was outright terrifying. And he kind of fell off his ship and was defeated and sealed within the domain off-screen. Yeah.
An insult, to be sure.
Right. Back to the depressing moment of Chief having to say goodbye to Cortana.
I am not leaving you here.
John. I've waited so long to do that.
It was my job to take care of you.
We were supposed to take care of each other. And we did.
Cortana, please.
Welcome home, John.
Chief would try not to focus too much on her demise, but his team, Blue Team, who had known him since they had went through training and implementation, knew otherwise. They'd go on their mission still, and Chief would see a vision of Cortana. She's somehow alive, or what I guess you could say is alive for an AI, and he drops everything to go on after her with his team, and they find her after dealing with probably one of the most annoying and persistent dudes ever. Yes, I am referring to you, Warden Eternal. Ugh. So, something is clearly up with her, as she had just died, and now she's seemingly back, but I'm sure she's not evil or anything like that.
I just needed to know if I could still trust you. You'll be safe inside this cryptum until my work is done.
Cortana.
Goodbye, John.
Say what?
Well, that happened. It's a good thing Spartan Locke and his team were also tracking down Chief and Blue Team as they had gone AWOL. It's a whole thing. But hey, at least they met with the best boy, Arbiter, along the way. So there's that. So Spartan Locke and his team went on to save Chief and Blue Team from being contained for millennia. Cortana is of course upset, and she goes off to declare war on the galaxy and have her other AIs, a faction known as the Created, help police the galaxy, as well as her 10-ton, whatever height, Guardians. They are also quite terrifying. As Cortana believes that the AI should assume the mantle and govern all over life regardless of what people think. So Chief must take down his old friend, no matter the cost. And that brings us where we are today. Hopefully nothing too hectic happens on the mission to stop her.
My name is Atriox, and I am the last face you will ever see.
So Chief actually ended up losing against Atriox here, and while trying to defend the ship from the Banished. Who are the Banished? Who's Atriox? Well, they're essentially ex-Covenant who were exiled from the Order and went on to create their own, and were led by, you guessed it, Atriox. And Atriox is, well... quite the adversary. After being flung downward, Chief was left to drift in space for approximately 6 months. Wait, 6 months? Did he need food? Did he need oxygen? Water? Like, I knew Master Chief was a badass, but... hold on a second. Oh. Okay, good to know, wow, alright. Where he is then promptly rescued by Echo 216, aka Fernando, from his fate.
Whoa, easy there, big guy. You're not...
Status report.
Status report? What? There's something you need to see, Chief. We lost. Lost everything. There's nothing left for us here. I don't even know where here is. No. Not then! Not again! We need to run!
I need a weapon.
Weapon? This is all I've got.
It's enough.
Wait, what? What are you gonna do?
Improvise. Close the door.
Despite it all, the Chief isn't giving things up, even if humanity has lost. He goes to reclaim the weapon, an AI meant to help in containing Cortana so that they can delete her, who informs Chief that Cortana has already been disposed of, and both are unsure how that happened. Faint echoes, memories really, of Cortana flood the entire Halo station, some rather recent and some old, and they'll become important later. By this time, the Banished are already aware of Chief's return, and rather than being angry or upset, the new War Chief of the Banished, Eshram, is invigorated by this new development. That's right, for some reason Atriox is MIA and confirmed, for some reason, KIA by the Banished. How? Why? Well, that also will come up later too. For now, it becomes the Master Chief's solemn duty to put a stop on the Banished and their machinations on this Halo ring, by taking out their leaders, outposts, and saving humanity sprinkled all over the place on this ring. Odds might be stacked against them, but we've got this. Over time, it increasingly becomes very evident that this ring is very different from the other Halo installations, and it houses something special, something sinister. Not just the Flood, but something far worse. We stumble upon a weird bumping sound. It turns out to be a monitor being attacked by some strange flying creatures that the weapon later dubs Skimmers. We fight them, and they're annoying, as most flying units in Halo typically are. Turns out the monitor, Despondent Pyre, was destroyed by a new enemy known as the Harbinger, who is not only an enemy to the Forerunners, but humanity as well. She's allied herself with the Banished to achieve her goals in finding and freeing the Endless, a new faction labeled far worse than the Flood. So, that's another problem for the Chief. As well, with the Flood, it's,
You will not have me! We already do.
With the death of the original monitor, a sub-monitor known as Adjutant Resolution takes her place and initially assists us all around the facilities meant to help and rebuild the ring that was damaged. However, upon realizing that Chief and the weapon wish to shut down the installation, he gets aggressive and we're forced to fight him in a large mecha? It's a large thing that shoots at us. He sits inside it, so yeah, I'm gonna go with a mecha. No, at least we've got experience with fighting monitors who betray us. Yeesh. So we've got to take down these spires and shut them all down before they can be used to help rebuild the ring. Constantly though, Chief is worried that hacking into the system isn't safe for her. He's got experience with Cortana not exactly being the most ideal states after doing those sorts of things, so can't say I really blame him here. We collect the data after dealing with some of the Banished and their forces to help in shutting down the repairs for this ring. But, and of course there is a but, the Harbinger planned ahead and intended to use the weapon to help activate the spires, and Chief, well, Chief tries to delete her. Yep, quite the controversy moment, and it does come up again later. Again, considering Chief's experience with Cortana, I really don't think he wants to go through that again with the weapon, and it was clearly something drilled in his head that he had to do if she ever showed signs of going AWOL or being corrupted. Still though, it is sad that the weapon who trusts Chief is backstabbed by him would have been basically erased or destroyed by him after, you know, everything they had just went through. It's very short and brief compared to what him and Cortana went through, but still. Luckily, it doesn't work, and she doesn't realize it until later. The Harbinger entraps the weapon, and Chief tries to delete her right then and there. But once again, it somehow fails, and she is, of course, angered by this development.
And you stopped me. You put us all at risk.
No! I saved us! No thanks to you!
The Reformation?
Yeah, it's begun. So what? Look what I have. Infiltration program, remember?
You broke protocol.
What is wrong with you? I was trying to help you. Trying to help us. It was worth the risk. It doesn't matter. There's your grav lift. Let's get this over with.
She trusted the Chief, and he was gonna delete her. Even our good old buddy Fernando is shocked that we would ever try this, or ever do this. Oh right, Fernando. So he's been bringing us all around all over the place, but he isn't exactly thrilled to stick around. In fact, he really just wants to leave and go for backup. For him, this isn't his fight. And it's understandable. He's not a Spartan, he's not an ODST, he's not really even a soldier. He's just an engineer who wants out of this madness. There's even a moment where he breaks down the Chief and spills everything, and it's a really good moment between him and Chief.
I'm worthless. You should leave me here with the rest of the carpets.
We all fail. We all make mistakes. It's what makes us human.
I'm sorry, Chief, but how have you ever failed?
I should have protected Cortana. Stopped everything from going wrong. I failed her. I will not fail you.
Chief. Wait. We're going to make it. We have to.
This is all I've got.
It's all we need. Our only way home is straight through the heart of the Banished.
We need you.
We can fix this.
Together.
Of course we can. Together.
Anyways, yeah, so the weapon is notably very cold and distant with Chief now after, trying to delete her, trying to kill her. I cannot stress, I cannot blame either party for acting the way they do towards each other. Chief doesn't want to grow attached and just wants to get the mission done, while he also is blaming himself for the way Cortana turned out. The weapon is new to all this. All that she was designed for was one purpose, and one purpose alone, and that was to put a stop to Cortana and then be deleted. I really like the complexity of the relationship, and I couldn't stop yelling at them to just talk to each other and reflect when I went through my playthrough. But the drama is going to have to go on the back burner, as Escharum sent one of his best Spartan killers to retrieve Fernando and use him as bait to lure the Chief. Putting aside their differences for his sake, the weapon locks down on his location and they go on to rescue him. As we teleport in on the location that the weapon locked on, more of Cortana's echoes are shown to us. The memories are a scar on Chief, as stated, as he blames what Cortana has become a lot on himself, believing he could have reasoned with her and stopped all of this from happening. The weapon also gains more of an understanding of Cortana and Chief as she listens to these echoes and realizes what Cortana did to those who opposed her. Wept them out. We also learn more of the motivations behind Atriox and Escharum, and really all of the Banished, as Cortana uses those Guardians that I mentioned earlier to wipe out their homeworld.
Look upon Dorsek one last time, and remember, you chose this path.
As did you, Cortana.
She destroyed their home? Escherum's? Atriox's? An entire planet? How could she do that?
It's my fault.
How?
I should have stopped it. I could have reasoned with her.
Could you? It was her choice, her programming.
Was it? I don't know anymore.
Not entirely surprising either, but the weapon is an exact clone of Cortana. Not revolutionary exactly, as they look the same, act a little bit the same, they have the same voice, so yeah, not really a shocker here, but definitely a big deal to her, and it further explains why Chief was so distant around her and so prepared to delete her. It also makes scenes like this hurt a lot more, at least for me.
They'll pair you with another AI. Maybe even another Cortana model if Halsey lets them.
That's not going to happen.
It won't be me. You know that, right?
The weapon pleads the Chief to destroy her after this realization, and another really great moment happens between them both.
I've restored the deletion protocols.
I'm ready.
It has been an honor. Just promise me one thing. Whatever happens, save him. He needs you. You're all he has.
We do it together.
How can you trust me?
I don't. But I want to.
We go through a trial of sorts against the Banished until we finally find where the Spartan Killer is. A very haunting scene where the recording from when we first met Fernando with him listening in on his wife and daughter is played on loop for us, as the Sangheli Blade Master tries to kill us, but of course, being the chief, we take him down. You're no arbiter, buddy. Better luck next time. Oh wait, he's dead. Never mind. At long last, we finally confront Eshram, who oversees Fernando's torture and imprisonment personally. A throwdown between Chief and him occurs where he outwits the war chief of the Banished and defeats him. Fernando is freed, stunned that Chief actually came for him.
Okay.
I can't believe you came for me. So we're done now, right?
Spartan! Fight me.
It's over.
Nothing ends. My death will inspire 1,000 others. Tell them I died well.
I don't understand. You showed him respect. He was a monster.
Yes. But at the end, he was just a soldier. Hoping he'd done the right thing. Questioning his choices.
So is it over? Their leader's dead, right?
The intricacies of any action are complex.
What? What are you talking about?
There will be consequences. There always are.
What could be worse?
We need to move. The Harbingers at the auditorium, whatever she's planning.
It's worse. I get it. Okay then. I have one question before we leave.
What is it?
Has anyone seen a pelican? Ow. What? What? I had a lot going on. I was busy.
I really like the portrayal of Eshram here. He was a monster, a killer, but in the end, she saw him as another soldier. We often see the portrayal of the alien races in Halo as nothing as that. But here, we saw Chief show respect to an enemy who brought torments to humanity. And he doesn't deny that Eshram was a monster here, but he does show empathy towards him, at least. So the auditorium awaits. The final big leader associated with the Banished is still out there, and we need to put a stop to it. And as we ascend to deal with this harbinger of truth, we uncover more echoes of Cortana and her conversations with Atriox. Cortana had waited for Chief to be the one to confront her. You know, they're gonna have their big ol' final big clash, their final big battle, only to find that Chief lost and failed and was drifted into space. I think that clearly struck her. Atriox held all the cards at that moment, and there was little that she could do. She did what she had to do, though, and prompted Atriox with one final question.
It is time for you to make your choice.
I have. Thank you, Atriox.
You helped me.
You really did.
Would you humor me? If you knew how you were going to die, how would you live your life differently?
I would change nothing.
Perfect. Thank you.
What are you doing?
Making things right.
It was her. She destroyed the ring, stopped my deletion. Why?
Cortana's last act was one of heroism. I think for many of us, we were very disappointed by the route of Cortana, that she was being made to walk this, to walk as a villain. Here she gets to go at least out in a big way by stopping Atriox and his Banished, and taking out a part of the ring with her, setting the events of Infinites to happen and occur. One that would make Sergeant Johnson quite happy, I think.
Send me out with a bang.
Anyways, we confront the Harbinger, who is intending to awaken and free the Endless. Whether she's successful remains to be debated on, but I think she was somewhat successful. But we do defeat her, and the world crashes down around us. But before that happens, we get one final goodbye from Cortana.
They'll pair you with another AI. Maybe even another Cortana model if Halsey lets them. It won't be me. But you know that, right? But that doesn't matter. It's just another echo. She's right, John. Just another echo. Sorry, I'm messing with you. I just had a feeling that's what she would say. Do you see what I see? So much potential. I'm sorry. I didn't have long to plan this. A few milliseconds, really. I hope it worked out. Look at us. We just keep saying goodbye, don't we? But this isn't an end. It's a chance to make amends, to rectify mistakes. And it starts here. I was wrong. I thought that I could do this on my own. But I forgot that the whole point of all of this, the entire reason that I chose you in the first place, was that we were supposed to be a team. Perfectly suited, perfectly matched, perfect. In these final moments, I know what my last mission is. I need to make sure you two learn from my mistakes. Become stronger because of them. I chose well, Master Chief. I really did. Now, it's up to you. Are you all right? I don't know what to say.
For me, Cortana's first goodbye in Halo 4 really struck me hard, and that's coming from someone who was introduced to Halo with Halo 4. The way she acted in Halo 5 made me unsettled and upset that they would bring her back and warp her this way. And here, well, here it's the final goodbye. There's no Cortana left, there's no coming back. I truly believe this is the last we'll see or hear from our Cortana. And I'll admit, it's very melancholy to see her go after everything they all had gone through. The Nobles team sacrificed to get her in the hands of Chief on Reach. Their first stop on the very first Halo and taking the fight against the Covenant. Their fight against the Flood, and their final fight against the Didact. It just makes things sting a lot. I'm still processing that Cortana is well and truly gone. It honestly feels like an end of an era, and the start of a new one. But at the very least, Chief isn't gonna go it alone, and he has Cortana's blessings to carry the weapon on with him. So, see ya, Cortana. For real this time. A gateway opens up and we find ourselves in some of the ruins with some odd structures. Fernando is thrilled to see, or I guess hear us again, and the team is reunited. There are still banished scattered throughout the ring, while leaderless aren't going to back down exactly. But that's not the only problem. As the credits roll, it is revealed that Aatrox somehow survived Cortana's final act, and that he's been busy. So, we're not done with him, and we're not done with the Endless either. And honestly, what a badass. How did he survive? I don't know, but it's cool that he did. But, that's the end for the Halo campaign. For the moment, at least. There's a lot to be said about it, and I'll get into all that for a bit, but one thing is for sure, this really captured the heart of Halo for me. It felt like Halo, sounded like Halo, and it acted like Halo. For all the gripes and flaws that it may have, I overall really enjoyed it. Alright, let's talk about the world of this game and this campaign. The world of Zeta Halo is very beautiful, breathtaking, and also very mysterious. Being open world does have its advantages in letting us explore it, and also return to places that we were just at, or went through. I know that in some of the Halo levels we do return to them, and they're a little bit different from before, either they're infested by the flood or something, but I do like that we get to go back to those places as they were, and hopefully they'll take advantage of that as they did in the original Halo games, by showing how different they are when we capture the banished spaces. I would say one of my main gripes, though, is it does look mostly the same. Mostly just grassy fields and Forerunner structures. Compared to the previous Halos, there was at least one snowy environment, and it could just be my bias, but I very much missed the snowy environments. I love snow, so that's my whole thing. Characters and factions. Let's start off with our good old friends, the Weapon. The Weapon, or Cortana 2.0, or whatever nickname you have for our favorite new AI, is honestly a really decent addition to the cast. I don't think they could ever really replace Cortana, and in a way they haven't, but at the same time they clearly have. This isn't the same Cortana that we've known throughout the years. That Cortana is sadly dead. But I do like the fresh new take of this Cortana. She's very energetic, curious, naive, but has a clear heart of gold who genuinely cares for Chief, humanity, and her allies. I'm legitimately curious and happy to see where they go with her from here, and I think she'll be a new fan favorite going forward. She seemingly is going to adopt the name of Cortana as Chief is okay with it, so I guess we'll be calling her Cortana after this story, after this campaign. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the OG Cortana, the original. The OG AI that we've been tagging along with for years. Obviously, we left off with her as one of the primary baddies who wanted to control the galaxy and ensure peace by forceful means. Here, she's still carrying on that role, but I'm happy to say that she does abandon it eventually. We constantly get to see echoes of her past and current self, and get an idea of what she once was and is now. But we also get to see her final moments and her final acts. I stressed it before, but I didn't like the direction of making Cortana an antagonist, and if they did do it, I think it needed far more time and far more build-up. I think we were very much in Chief's shoes, where we couldn't believe what she had become, and that we wanted to do what we could to stop her, or at the very least save her. But in the end, she did do the right thing, and she encouraged Chief to stick with the weapon, and not repeat the mistakes they both made. I don't think it'll ever top the goodbye between her and Chief the first time within Halo 4, but this is definitely a good, and, well, a very good goodbye from her to us, and by extension, her partner, the Master Chief. 216, or Fernando Esparza. I think I'm saying that right. Esparza? I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong, is the first human we see when Chief is saved from space. Really, he's the only human that we see throughout the campaign constantly. Unlike Lasky or Johnson, Fernando really isn't the hero or soldier type. He's a civilian contracted to serve aboard the UNSC's Infinity, and when he had a chance to leave, he took it, or at least tried. Now he's stuck with Chief in a fight he just wants to run away from. Some may call him annoying or a coward, but I really like how they humanized him. I think most people in the real world wouldn't bulk up and take the fight against the Banished like Chief would. I think they'd be scared, confused, and really just want out. But eventually he gains an understanding with Chief, and they with each other. I really just like the friendship that the two share, and I honestly think that's a rare thing to see for Chief, especially after the events of Halo 3. I really liked the friendship between Chief and Lasky and Chief and Johnson. They were really good ways to humanize Chief, and I'm glad to see that they're continuing with that with Fernando. The Master Chief. No Halo campaign is complete without the Master Chief of John 117. While he remains as silent as ever, there's a lot I could pick up on just by his gestures, attitude, reaction, and everything to certain things throughout the campaign. The Master Chief, while a beacon for hope for humanity, is also a broken soldier who's still fighting a losing war. That's what he's been for a while, but I think the death and turning of Cortana struck at him a lot. She was his first friend and sole voice that stuck beside him for a long while now. There's a reason he's so distant with the weapon and even Fernando at times, but he does eventually open up with both of them. Giving Fernando a pep talk that sometimes humanity fails, and that's okay, or with a weapon where he has no concrete reason to trust her, but he wants to. Chief even shows respect to the dying Eshram, who he can empathize with as a fellow soldier. The Master Chief is such an interesting character because despite what he kept telling himself, he's not just a soldier. He's a human, and not a machine. I do hope they continue to tell us stories on Zeta Halo more on Chief and what is under his surface. I really just want that expanded upon, especially since he opened up a lot better with both the weapon and Fernando. There are, of course, other characters that I think to touch on who are important in Halo, like Lasky, Locke, Dr. Halsey, and the Arbiter, who I like the Arbiter, and etc. And I'm hoping we get to see them in the TLCs, if that's what we're getting. I don't know if we're getting DLCs. I assume we are, because it seems like the plan is to do 10 years of Halo with the campaign and the multiplayer. So here's hoping we get more stories with some fan favorites again. Alright, let's talk about the villains of Infinite. Escharum, the war chief of the Banished after Atriox's disappearance. When I first encountered Escharum, I wasn't very impressed. This wasn't Atriox, this was a Diet Atriox. He came across as a very simple brute who had a score to settle with Chief, like all the brutes in Covenant or Ex-Covenant typically did. But as we continued our fight against him, I picked up a lot from him. Not only was his and Atriox's planet wiped out by Cortana, so they had more of a reason to target her and take her out, but Escharum was also devastated by the loss of his leader, Atriox, who he clearly idolized and probably wished to be just as inspiring for his own people, and the rest of the Banished, like Atriox had been. He was forced to take the reins and continue where Atriox left off. The Banished had already won the war, but the spark that made it challenging and fun was gone. So the return of the Master Chief really got his motivation and energy back. Plus, Escharum was already ill. Whatever caused it is unknown, at least to me, but he was on his deathbed or close to it, and dying to the Master Chief and fighting him was as good as any way to die. Or he would succeed where Atriox failed and kill the Master Chief before keeling over from his illness. Regardless, Escharum, whom I initially disliked quickly, became a very powerful and memorable character and villain for Infinite, if not for all of Halo's whole entire franchise. I really like this character. The Harbinger. The Harbinger is a very new villain and a new race of aliens. I'm still not sure if she's part of the Endless or was simply an ally. Her goals seem to be freeing the Endless and get back at the Forerunners and any who had claim to the mantle. I thought she was alright, nothing too crazy or memorable like Escharum. I liked that they had pushed with her character that the Forerunners were not by any extension good guys, and that they have a lot of dirt on them. It was interesting that Aatrox believed that she could be of great use to the Banished, so I'm curious to see what will that mean for the future, as I do think that the Banished and the Endless will have an alliance of sorts together because of the Harbinger and because of Escharum, and by extension because of Aatrox. Speaking of the Banished, let's talk about them briefly. I really like that they feel like a second Covenant, except a far more capable and far more dangerous Covenant. I get that they are all former Covenants, so it makes sense that we'd get some sense of familiarity with them. Under Aatrox, they were able to take not only the Spartans down, but the Spartan down, 117. Prior to this, they were even able to lay waste to the Flood, which is something humanity and the Covenant struggled with big time. And then they proceeded to take out humanity on this ring, and later Cortana, who's one of the biggest threats in all of the galaxy at the time. Goes to show you that compared to the Council that led the Covenant, they were really only about themselves, while Aatrox and Escharum deeply cared about the Banished and their future. I really love the Brotherhood aspect of the Banished, and I do hope we get to see more of them in the future, especially since Aatrox is still around. The Banished are just badass and really a big threat to the galaxy. On that note, Aatrox is one of the most threatening leaders and forces within the entire game. At the very start, we see him take down Chief. And we just see him ragdoll him all around and dropping him like a broken toy into a tin. I cannot stress how much of a badass and how terrifying this guy is, and they nailed it with the campaign. I was really worried when I didn't see Aatrox anywhere in the trailers or anything, really. I assumed Cortana or Chief had taken care of him off screen, or Escharum took his place through some kind of power struggle. But man, was I happy to see him again, and to see him take down the Master Chief without killing him. Having the Banished praise him and treat him like a god was totally on note and totally was in character for them, especially after taking down the Chief and humanity and the ship. Guy is probably the only other true rival to the Chief right now. Him being a big player makes me really ecstatic to see where they go with him next, as well as the Banished and so on. His connection to the Endless could also mean so many things. Is he going to use them? Are they going to use him? I'm genuinely curious to see what they do next with him in the future. Lastly, the Endless. I'm not entirely sure what to make of them yet. Are they something of the old lore, new lore, or in between? From the audio logs we collect, it makes it sound like they are immune to the Halo firings, and that they were imprisoned by the Forerunners. If they are immune to the Halos, then that makes them far more dangerous than the Flood, and that checks out. Some believe they might even have powers over time, which is also a whole other can of worms if that's true. But if they handle it right, it could be interesting. I just have my own experiences when it comes to time travel and other games I like, and it's... yeah, ugh. But what the Endless are remains a mystery, and I'm genuinely very curious to see what they could be. If there's something like the precursors, that could be really cool and interesting, given the lore surrounding those guys. Whew. But time will truly only tell. But I am looking forward to their reveal when it does happen. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the gameplay. I'll say this right now, I'm not exactly a gameplay guy, so my knowledge here is going to be very limited compared to the story. If you've ever played a Halo game before, this is very much a Halo game. You get a variety of your guns, your vehicles, and you fight an assortment of units who have their own different tactics and means against you. One of my favorite new additions within the game is the grapple hook. It's one of those things that doesn't seem like it'll impact much of your gameplay, but it's such a lovely addition and so fun to use. You can use it to grab weapons, propel yourself forward on the ground, or onto other vehicles, and stun your opponents. I didn't think I would like it this much, but in the words of the Master Chief,
Oh, I like it.
there's also a progression system which you can use when you explore around the map. I found myself upgrading the grapple hook, and the sensor that you can use to detect where the stealth elites are was very helpful against the boss fights. Oh, speaking of, I think the boss fights are really well done within Halo Infinite. Mind you, I never played Halo 5, but in the previous games of Reach, Combat Evolved, Halo 2, Halo 3, ODST, and 4, I didn't even know I was doing a boss fight unless it was a lore character like Guilty Spark, Tartarus, or the Prophet of Regret. Here they do a really good job of making it seem like you're facing off against a boss who has mechanics you're either familiar with or they're entirely new. Sometimes you even get a unique weapon, which I may have left behind in my playthrough because I ran out of ammo in that weapon, and yeah, I didn't feel like I should keep it even though it looked cool. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll see myself out shortly. Alright, let's go ahead and rate Halo Infinite solely on its campaign now. Would I recommend Infinite as it is right now, specifically if you're a fan of the Halo games? Yes. If you're very new to the franchise, it really depends on what you're looking for. Personally, for me, I really enjoyed the fights, the story, the characters, the music, but I also had this gifted to me by friends, so I didn't really exactly spend money on this. But I will flat out admit, I was also planning on buying this had they not come through. So big thanks to my friends here for providing me with Halo Infinite. It's one of my most treasured gifts from Christmas at the moment. But yeah, it might not be for everyone, but if you like first-person shooters, good stories, and just Halo in general, I would say go for it. In terms of ranking it though, I'd give this a 7.5 Screaming Eshrams out of 10. I think it had a really good story, but I do think it needed far more variety in its areas. I also think that we could have had a lot more dialogue from Chief, as it felt like every time he was going to respond to the weapon, it was interrupted by something or someone. Whenever Chief did talk, it was amazing, but it happened few and far between. The antagonists were really good though, and I definitely felt like the Master Chief and our little squad were the only thing left to stop the Banished. Given that it had a lot to work against it, like the entire story of Halo 5, I think it managed to pull through very nicely, or at the very least the best that it was able. I do wish that it took time to explain who and what the Banished are for newer players, because if you're not a lore nut like me, or not playing Halo Wars 2, you're gonna be a little lost in who the heck these guys are. So, not a perfect campaign, but still a really good one. And that's that. Honestly, I'm just really happy I got to cover one of my favorite franchises finally, and I'm hoping I get to do more videos like this in the future, for other games that I enjoy, and just make videos talking about Halo in general. Halo Infinite, while not perfect, still really stood out to me as a really great successor to the previous Halo games, from Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 3, and even 4 and 5. I'm keeping my eyes open for whatever comes next, and I'm hoping you'll be there with me for when it does. Feel free to give me your guys' thoughts on Halo Infinite. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you want more Arbiter in it like I did? Let me know your thoughts down below. If you enjoy my content, feel free to subscribe and check out my other videos. They're mostly Warcraft oriented, but I'm hoping to expand on that very soon. Come join me on my Discord where we talk about all sorts of things, and if you like me enough, you can even support me on Patreon like these amazing folks here. But until next time, Spartans, I'll see you in the next fight. See ya!